In this new series, part 1 will be about grain trains. There are many wonders about grain trains and what their actual purpose is, and I'm here to give some a little insight into that and just to show off a few catches of what I got with grain trains. So, without any further ado, let us begin. Grain trains can carry anywhere between corn, rice, soybeans, barley meal, and wheat. Sometimes a grain train will even be on its own railroad and never go to another railroad to get loaded or unloaded, such as the case for this one. This is a westbound grain train at Spring Valley Road on the Dayton District at milepost 160, being led by two big SD70 Aces. The grain train was loaded at ADM Truro in Columbus over on the east side and will go back west down towards Georgia. These cars are not company owned by NS, but they can be either leased or NS can buy them and use them as their own. Here's a grain train that has NS company owned cars. It has the Norfolk Southern logo on the top right corner of them. This is another cloudy evening over on the Dayton District in Springfield, where an NS empty grain train is on its way to ADM Truro in Columbus to get loaded before heading back west. This is train 55R, empty grain loads out of Valdosta, Georgia, heading to Columbus to get reloaded. The train stays on at Norfolk Southern for the entirety of its trip, round and back. Here's a grain train that had come out of Circleville off the Columbus District and is now heading west, returning back to, I believe, Macon, Georgia. The train will get unloaded down there and will go back somewhere east or north somewhere else to get loaded. The grain trains don't have to be at a set destination and origination point. Generally, there are two locomotives that are needed to move this grain train. Sometimes you can use three if the train is heavy or long enough, but in this case, there's only two needed.
Clear, 164, headed west.
Sometimes there are grain trains that go off one railroad and have to go to another's to get either unloaded or loaded. An example is this CSX grain train down in Bloomingburg, Ohio. This is on the Indiana and Ohio's Midland subdivision, but the CSX power and the cars belong to CSX, but they had to come off the CSX and go down to South Charleston in order to get loaded. I&O is bringing it back. The CSX power stayed on as order to not waste any time with I&O bringing up their own locomotives to take the train down there. This train will be picked up by a CSX crew near Columbus and will be taken back to Parsons Yard and will either go south towards North Carolina or north towards Michigan to get unloaded, and will do the same thing again. Same thing is done with Norfolk Southern. Here at 182 East Street in Springfield, I&O is bringing a loaded grain train up from South Charleston. They'll take it to the NS's passing siting in Enon, Ohio, about 3 miles outside of Springfield, where the train will be picked up by an NS crew and taken west to get unloaded, and will eventually come back to Springfield and get picked up by I&O to get loaded somewhere on their tracks. Leaving the run-through power on from NS actually saves a bit of time and money. If I&O wanted to use their own power, they would have had to come out here and detach the locomotives from this train and put their own on to take them to the destination, and then would have to do the same thing vice versa, bringing it back. You know, sometimes I think grain trains don't get that much appreciation. You think of a grain train like, oh, cool, there's just nothing really interesting on there. But the history behind these grain trains and how they move America forward, how they're helping us today, how they're getting everything to where we need it, is a big part of our society, and in my opinion, should not be taken lightly.
Has anybody worked on that, or are we still not avoid using that, or do you know?
For this next grain train, we'll take a look at 182 at East Street again, same location. Here, I&O has just picked up a grain train off the Norfolk Southern in Enon, Ohio, and is bringing it on their own tracks so they can run it down to South Charleston to get loaded, and then return it to NS in about a day or two so it can go back west. I&O in this instance is using their own power, but they're also using NS's power at the same time. They figured it would save some more time and money to keep it, rather than just leave it on the east leg wide down there past those crossings. This train was a particular nice catch because you don't normally see I&O hooked up with another railroad's power using it to take it onto their own railroad. They usually just use the foreign road's power, but sometimes in this instance they can use their own along with it. For our last and final episode, we take a look at 40Z heading west. He came out of Waterloo, Indiana up on the Chicago line, ran down the Sandusky line to Columbus, and is now heading west on the Dayton District back to New Orleans, Louisiana to the Union Pacific. Leading today is a fan favorite, NS 1066, the New York Central Heritage Unit, and on its home rails here on the Dayton District. That concludes the Fabulous Wonders of Unit Trains Part 1. In one of our next parts, we'll talk about ethanol trains. At milepost 172 on the NS Dayton District, I'm Jans Locomotive Works 8098, signing off, and have a good evening.